Myth versus truth. If someone faints, pouring water on them helps them wake up.
Lay them flat, raise their leg.
If someone is choking, giving them water will help push the foot down.
Myth.
What led you to this journey, going to emergency response healthcare?
I would say motherhood. When I had my first child, which happened in Canada, and because of that experience, I had to call 911 and they came and they attended to him. And I remember just thinking, like, if the same thing had happened in Nigeria, what would have been done?
Welcome to today's episode, and with us we have the amazing Folake Owodunni, and she is the CEO, if I do say so myself, and the co-founder of Emergency Response Africa. And it's a healthcare company improving how medical emergencies are managed in Nigeria. So we have someone who cares about our healthcare. She holds a master's degree in global health and development from University College London and MBET from University of Waterloo. Wow. And she is a Canadian Red Cross first responder. So she's here and she's definitely there as well. With 15 plus years of experience across healthcare, communications, and consulting in Nigeria, US, and Canada, she has received recognitions including the Aurora Tech Award, the Google Black Founders Fund, and GICA Next Innovation with the Japan Award. And through ERA, Emergency Response Africa, she is helping people to connect to first responders, ambulances, and hospitals, improving emergency response and saving lives. So we're going to do a trick one right now. We're going to ask you a few questions. Welcome, Folake Owodunni.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Welcome. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Same here.
We're going to ask a few questions.
Okay.
We're going to ask myth versus truth.
Okay.
You know, it's just going to be something that's going to be 5 seconds because it's something that has been on our viewers. I'm sure anybody listening, you've had these questions in your mind. So let's just go 3 to 5 seconds, I promise.
Okay.
If someone faints, pouring water on them helps them wake up.
It's a myth.
It's a myth.
Yeah.
It's a myth.
Lay them flat, raise their leg.
Okay. Lay them flat, raise their legs. If someone is having a seizure, you should put spoon or cloth in their mouth.
No, it's a myth.
It's a myth.
You could break their teeth. Yeah.
You could break their teeth.
Yeah. Just
Wow. Okay.
keep them safe.
If someone is choking, giving them water will help push the foot down.
No, myth. You can
It's a
make
myth?
it worse. Yes.
Putting water, really?
Yes.
Wow, okay. And if someone collapses, the first thing you should do is panic and start shouting, hey, everybody help me.
No.
No, it's a myth.
There are other things.
There are other things to do. And if a child swallows something harmful, maybe a toy or something, making them vomit is the first step. Because parents, we do that, you know, there's this thing, they'll say, okay, put your hands inside, 2 fingers in their mouth to make them throw up.
Yeah.
Is it a myth?
It's a myth. Depending on what they saw, it could be dangerous. So, no.
Wow, okay.
Seek medical attention.
First, okay, so you've heard that. So honestly, you know, I know we have those truths and myths, but I'm curious why because there's a mindset behind these emergency response myths and truths that we have. Why is it that, you know, people say when someone pours water on them, or why do they where did that come from? You know, why do people say that? You know, why are these things dangerous, and why should people really not listen to all these myths?
I mean, sometimes it's just, it's cultural, it's what we've heard around us, it's handed down in one format or another. You know, maybe it's a case of, oh, when I was a child, somebody fainted and then they poured water and the person woke up. And so for me now, I believe that if somebody faints, the thing to do is pour water. But it could just be that maybe because the person happened to have gotten to the floor and the blood flowed back to their head, they were going to wake up anyway.
Wow.
But the water just seemed like the thing that helped. So I think, you know, it's cultural. It just gets passed on. And maybe also because most of us don't get any formal education or formal training in first aid. We never get a chance to actually question those myths. So it just keeps going.
It just keeps going and keeps going. And honestly, when we're having this conversation, I told you that, you know, life and death it's just a thin line, just really a thin line between knowing what to do and when to do it. Yeah. So what led you to this journey where you decided, you know, you're going to take this journey, you're going to go into emergency response healthcare, and then of course with your accolades, you can see that you were not in Nigeria. What brought you back to stay here and be here with us?
Okay, so I'll try to answer.
It's two questions. I know it's two questions, but
so I think what led me to this journey. I would say motherhood.
Okay.
And not intentionally. So let me backtrack a bit. I was definitely that child that had the doctor's kit as her favorite toy and played doctor, and always wanted to be in the healthcare space. And I think as I got older, I got a sense of I wanted to do it more broadly, which led me to public health. But when I had my first child, this was back in 2015, so about 2 years after I had him, almost 2 years, he was still like a year and a half old. He had an emergency, which happened in Canada. And because of that experience, I had to call 911. And I think just going through everything was very eye-opening, because I realized that, wow, like, first of all, the fact that there was 911 to call, and how did I know 911? From all the movies I had watched growing up. I called them and they came and they attended to him. And I remember just thinking, like, if the same thing had happened in Nigeria, what would I have done? Oh. And how would the, situation have turned out? Yeah. And I think it was just very obvious that, okay, I don't know how that would have gone, so I'm very fortunate to have been in a place where I could get that help. Well, why can't we have that? Why shouldn't we have that? And so to your second question about then coming back to Nigeria, I think like most Nigerians abroad, I always had a pull or a desire for home. I was grateful for where I was and grateful for the opportunities, but you want to participate in some way.
Yes.
And I think it really boiled down to, I want to solve problems, and we have no shortage of problems, especially in healthcare. Yeah. And so, it just presented an opportunity, saw that there was maybe something we could do, and that's really what led us down the path.
I like the fact that you said solving problems, and there are a lot of problems in this space, And one of the things that we wanted to talk about was how can people in the diaspora, how can they actually help here in the homeland? People that actually, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that want to help. There are a lot of people that want to give back, and they might not be able to physically come here, but they also want to ensure that the healthcare here gets better. It gets better and it gets, so how can people actually impact and help the healthcare in Nigeria?
I mean, so I will say, like, there are things that people are already doing, right? And I think it's very good to acknowledge those things. So you have family members who are paying for the healthcare of their families here. That alone makes a huge difference, because it increases access for people to care. It shouldn't have to be that way, but it is what it is. But the other thing is, you have people that are in the medical field abroad who often will come for like medical missions, or they'll send resources in some format. So those are good things that we already do. But speaking about emergencies specifically, right? Because you can't predict them. When it happens, you're not going to come from abroad to address the situation.
You can't.
So what are some of the things? So Emergency Response Africa likes to give people options, likes to give people at least the ability to either help the people on the ground, their people on the ground, be prepared, or give them access to care when they need it. So what does that look like practically? We offer first aid and CPR training and certification. And we do this we have it in our training center, but we actually go into people's homes as well. So we have the families that will say, you know what, I want my spouse and my children and the caregivers, the nannies working in my house and the security guard, I want all of them to know first aid. So we'll actually come and we will run that in their compound, in their house for them. But what that does is it means that there's a shared level of understanding amongst everybody in the home. That once something happens, this is the number to call. Once something happens, if somebody has, this issue, these are the things you can do. And what you have is people start to do, at the very least, they start to do the right things instead of the wrong things, which can be even more harmful. But there are other things, there's some people who have the resources, they will actually buy an ambulance and put them on a network. The only thing we warn against, please don't buy a random ambulance and then just put it somewhere. There are too many of those. You need to put it in a place where it can be managed, it can be staffed, and it can actually go out and save lives. And because we run a response network, we offer people that opportunity. So if somebody wanted to invest in an ambulance asset, but they don't know, they're not going to run it themselves, they don't know, what to do with it once they've got it, that's something that we can help with. So there are different ways. We just say, think about it from the level of how can you help your people be prepared? Maybe it's your secondary school, maybe it's your church, whatever it is, get people trained. And then if you can invest in the infrastructure as well, there are ways to do that.
I like the fact that you said, we can help people, the ambulance part. So there are actually people that just buy ambulances and they just park them somewhere. Wow, okay. Yeah. That also shows about the gap in knowledge as well.
Absolutely.
So why is there a gap in that knowledge? Because people want to help. They have the means and the resources to help. But then Nigeria is a place where you can easily just do anything in a particular way. But, we want structure. And that's one of the reasons why I'm grateful that we're having this conversation, because the structure is also there, but the lack of knowledge is not helping people. What kind of tools can they access? What tools can they access apart from ERA? Maybe even ERA, we can actually talk about ERA, how exactly it is that you can access ERA in order to get this kind of information. So if you are out there and you do want to help and you want to partner with someone, what are the ways that they can actually reach out?
So let me do a teeny tiny bit of history first, because I think sometimes it's important for us as Nigerians to give ourselves a little bit of credit too. This space, emergency services, emergency response, is extremely new in Nigeria. And by new, I don't mean it has never existed before. I mean that in the last maybe 2 to 3 decades is really when we've tried to do something. When you compare that to other countries that have fully functioning, whether it's 911 or 999, they've also gone through a journey, and we're all going through the same journey. So for a lot of them, they started off providing, I guess you could call it corpse evacuation.
Really?
Oh yes. And that was what was the sort of initial thing that people did. In fact, it started with like maybe police getting to the scene of something because who else do you call? It's police.
Oh yes.
And then eventually it became, okay, let's have vehicles that can, pick up dead bodies. Then it became, actually, why wait till they're dead? Can we actually help them while they're still alive? And it became just, patient transportation. Okay, car, get there. Okay, but can we also provide some care along the way? And that's how, the concept of paramedics and paramedicine started to develop. So there's been a journey that all of these other countries' systems have gone on.
Yeah.
And I like to share that because I think sometimes we don't realize that we also are on that journey. And so, coming to this topic of myths, one of the biggest myths that you see in Nigeria is ambulance is for dead body. I can tell you that we did a partnership with the state government. It started about 2 years ago, and we ran it for almost 2 years. And in that, when we started, we set up some ambulances, we trained community members as first responders, and we started, going out to the cases that were happening. And we saw a very strange phenomenon. The ambulance would arrive, and people would run. And you'd be wondering, but you called for help. So
why are you running?
Help? Why are you running away? And because we had trained community members, they were able to start to give us insight into how the community was thinking. And so for people, it was like, for an ambulance to come, that means this person is already dead. They are finished. But that's not the case. Ambulances are for the living. So it made us realize that we needed to not just tell people, when this happens, call this number. When this happens, call this number. We had to also tell them, like, look, an ambulance is for a person that needs to get to help quickly. And if they enter, this is the type of help they're going to get. It means that they will get to the hospital faster. Because the other thing is people like to enter taxis or their own private vehicles. And we say, look, an ambulance can put on the siren. An ambulance can go one way, nobody's going to stop them. So those are the things that people need to be educated on.
Shifts.
Yes, it's very much a mindset shift. And again, how does that happen? It happens through training. It happens through communications. And so you ask the question about, okay, what does ERA do? I mean, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. We provide training and we provide sensitization. So there are companies that will call us and say, look, I have, 500 laborers that are all working in this site. We're not going to do first aid and CPR training and certification for each of them.
All the 500.
But we want them to at least know some basics. And so how do we achieve that? We'll have you come and do a sensitization, show them some things and, that type of thing. So there are ways around it.
Okay. And speaking of ways around it, let's put this into practice. Let's create some scenarios where an emergency actually happens, what would you tell the person listening right now? If this happens, this is the best thing to do. Let's start with in the workplace, or no, let's start with as a mom. You know, our moms. So let's speak to our fellow moms. If this happens, this is what you're supposed to do. These are the signs. What are the signs that you should look out for when specific things happen? Just to have that basic knowledge first.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a number of things, yes, right? But I think, one of the, let's say you come into a scenario and you find your child on the floor. They're just there. Now, of course, immediately that tells you something is wrong. The question is, what exactly is it? Did they fall? You don't know at that point. So there are a few things that when you go through training, they teach you. First one is you just even, are they responsive? By the time you talk, by the time, are you okay? Are you okay? Maybe you are, tapping the floor around them, they're not responsive. Then you want to check what's called the ABCs or ABCDs, depending on, where you hear it. Airway, breathing, circulation, deadly bleeding. Okay. So airway, can you see anything inside their mouth that is actually obstructing? Can you see anything? If you can't, okay, maybe they are not breathing. So how do you check? Is their chest rising and falling? Can you feel, if you put your cheek by their mouth, can you feel the breath coming out? Or are they maybe gasping, just short breaths, so they're not really breathing properly? Then you want to know, do they have a pulse? Now, not everybody knows how to do that. I was about to say, how do you check for a pulse? So again, right, as I said, depending on the training, but even if you don't know for sure,
how can you just check?
Can you feel it, or maybe under your wrist? Again, this is why training is so important. At least it just gives you basic tools, simple tools. And then do you see any sort of deadly bleeding or severe bleeding? Either it's spurting or it's really flowing, quite heavy. Those are things that tell you immediately, like, okay, this is serious. And of course, at that point, you want to do two main things. You want to call for help. So call for help, ideally, is you are activating a chain of support. You are calling a professional system. Not just shouting. Not just shouting. Because a lot of people will shout. Okay. But no, what you want to do is call who can actually intervene, who can actually help. Okay. So in Nigeria, we have an emergency number, 112. Different states have their own numbers as well. So like Lagos has 767, some other states have other numbers. You can call those numbers in truth.
24 hours.
24 hours. Good. Now, I won't say more than that. You can call.
You can call.
I know that there are sometimes challenges around reliability and there are concerns that the public has. And I know that, I've interfaced with a lot of public sector. I know that there are efforts to strengthen those things. But as Emergency Response Africa, we also have a toll-free number, and it's basically 08000 call CALLERA, right? So you can share that with your listeners.
We'll put that exactly. We'll put that in the description.
But you want to call people that can help, because what you will do is you'll then speak to someone that can triage, that can take you through a process to actually understand what's going on and dispatch the appropriate response. But what do you do in the meantime? You don't just start shouting at the hair. So that's again where first aid training comes in. So if you find out, for example, that they're breathing, automatically there's a pulse, they're breathing, right? So your own is just to put them in recovery position, wait, make sure you're not seeing anything. If you see heavy bleeding, you want to stop that bleeding. How? By applying pressure. Again, there are things that, I'm giving you real just high level.
To ask, you said you put them in recovery position. I'm sure someone listening is like, what's recovery position?
Well, that's why you have to go take the training. Right? I mean, that's it, right? But I think, the other thing is CPR. It's such a crucial skill. So if you find out that actually this person is not responsive, they're not breathing, no circulation, you want to be able to administer CPR. And CPR is essentially you manually equipping the body to still have blood flow throughout. And CPR combines both the chest compressions as well as the breathing, so rescue breaths. There are and I think it's important to say this, children are not just mini adults, right? So there are particular procedures for how you would attend to an adult that is quite different from how you would attend to a child.
Can you just give us one or two differences?
I mean, one example is, and this changes depending on, I guess, the folks that set it, but when you're administering CPR, for an adult, you're giving 30 compressions to 2 rescue breaths. For a child, you're usually giving 15 to 2. It can also, I think it depends on if there's one rescuer or if you have a second person with you. But that's just a simple example of, you know, how those things can differ. The last thing I'll say, and I didn't say this at the beginning, I should have, you always want to check that the scene is actually safe. Because if you get into a situation and actually it turns out that your child is on the floor because they had gone and put a fork inside the socket, and you don't notice, and you go and add yourself, you who is supposed to be the rescuer, you can become part of the emergency.
True.
And then who's going to help you? So you have to be able to assess the scene and make sure that it is safe before you step in and intervene. And I think that, you know, those are some of the basic things that apply when it comes to first aid.
Thank you so much for that. I think it took a lot in. Well, let's talk about, like, can we just go through maybe an adult? Someone has a seizure, you know, at the workplace. Let's look at the workplace, for instance. So how can someone actually respond to that kind of medical emergency?
So, you know, again, when they train, they tell you what to do and what not to do. We've already established what not to do. Oh, yes. All the, you know, putting the fork in their mouth, you know, putting your hand so that they won't swallow their tongue. People don't swallow their tongues. It's really not a thing. It's not a thing. It's even the way your anatomy is. How do you want to swallow your tongue?
True, very true.
You know, so it's not, you know, again, those are things not to do. But in general, especially if someone has a history of seizures. Now, we're talking about the workplace. We may or may not know that. Right. But one of the best things you can do is just keep them safe while they're seizing. So what does that mean? It means if there's anything that can, you know, poke them or hurt them or fall on them, or they can fall on something, you want to remove those things. You know, maybe it's about cradling them, just keeping them still. You're not holding them tight and preventing them from seizing. It needs to run its course.
They actually need to.
There's not, other than the medication and the intervention of professionals, you as a lay person, there's not a lot you can do in that moment other than keeping them safe. So keep them safe, and again, call for help. Call for the professionals, because they have the medication that they can do. They know the questions they need to ask to understand what might be the underlying cause for that seizure. Again, in the workplace, everybody's going to be panicking that, this is my colleague, we're working together, we were just in a meeting.
We were just eating and now he's on the floor.
But again, right, and that's why, you know, I keep saying training is not just, it's not for just the individual or the household, it's also your church. I mean, how many times have we seen videos of the pastor on the pulpit and they've gone down? Or somebody at work and they go down. So it has to cut across everywhere we are, because that once that preparedness is there, then people are able to handle it better. And I
think they're also able to, it just turns into, you know, automatic response. I know what to do. I know what to do. I know how to do it.
And it lowers the fear, right? Because a lot of times we do the wrong thing out of fear. We desire to help, but it's like there's so much panic. Oh my God, I don't know what. But if you've trained, you've practiced, and this is where drills come in, because it's one thing to do training today. But if you practice a few times over time, you will get to the point where at least you are able to respond more appropriately. So
that's really good. So for someone who is watching this who has never gotten any form of emergency response, what are the 3 things they can do this week to get them prepared and just to start them out on this journey?
I mean, training. So, you know, it's like I came here to sell training. And I believe in it so much. As a child, I was in the Red Cross. And it's so funny to me that I'm doing this work now. But I remember being a member of Red Cross with my little blue skirt and white shirt and, you know, the blue beret and everything. But I enjoyed that because it just gave me a feeling of, I can help somebody. But you don't know how foundational that is. So training. This week, you can absolutely reach out to ERA. We will set you up. Bring your family members, bring your friends. If you have a business, set it up for your business. Connect us to your HR. If it's your church, like whatever setting you're in, take it upon yourself to make sure that people are prepared. It's as simple as that.
Because it's as simple as life and death.
Yep.
It's so finicky, so simple, but yet it's so broad, and it's very, very important. And as we close, what does success mean or look like to you?
Personally,
professionally.
Personally, professionally. Okay. So I think success for me is living a life that I feel is worthy. When I look back, I want to be able to say that, you know, I gave my best to whatever it is I did. And that most importantly, the people coming behind me first and foremost being my children. They can see what I did and they're proud of it, and they also want to follow in the footsteps. Maybe not doing exactly the same thing, but at least, you know, creating a life and a career that actually helps people. So yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you so much, Folake, for this. We're definitely going to have more conversations about this, because this is not a conversation that is just within, you know, the space of time that we have here. But we hope that this episode has gotten you to make that move, get that training done, and ensure that when it does happen, we don't pray for it to happen. You actually know what to do. Until next time, stay on your own lane.